I never thought a 3-inch layer of snow on an air conditioning unit would cost me $2,000. But that's exactly what happened when Patricia Montgomery decided to make my life hell. My name is Jason Hendricks, and I've been an HVAC technician in Rochester, Minnesota, for 15 years. I bought my house in the Meadowbrook Estates development back in 2019, drawn in by the reasonable prices and the promise of a well-maintained community. What they didn't mention in the glossy brochures was that the HOA president, Patricia, had the personality of a wet cat and the temperament of a hornet that had been poked with a stick. The whole mess started on a Tuesday morning in February 2024. I was sitting at my kitchen table, drinking my second cup of coffee and scrolling through my email when I heard the distinctive sound of heels clicking up my driveway. I looked out the window and saw Patricia, her blonde hair teased into that classic suburban helmet, marching toward my front door with a clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but my truck was parked right there in the driveway, and she'd already seen me through the window. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, each chime more aggressive than the last. "Good morning, Patricia," I said as I opened the door, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Mr. Hendricks," she said, her lips pursed so tight they looked like a cat's rear end. "I'm here on official HOA business. What can I do for you?" She thrust a piece of paper at me. "You've violated Section 12, subsection C of the Meadowbrook Estates Community Guidelines. Your outdoor HVAC equipment is not being properly maintained." I took the paper and scanned it. It was a formal notice of violation, complete with a photograph of my backyard. The picture showed my air conditioning unit, which sat on a concrete pad behind my house, covered in about 3 inches of snow from the storm we'd had over the weekend. "You're fining me for snow on my AC unit?" I asked, incredulous. "The guidelines clearly state that all outdoor equipment must be kept in pristine condition and free of debris," Patricia said, tapping her pen against her clipboard. "Snow qualifies as debris. Patricia, it's February in Minnesota. Everything is covered in snow. That's not my concern. The rules apply year-round, and you're in violation. You have 72 hours to remedy the situation and pay the fine of $200. I felt my jaw tighten. $200 to sweep snow off an air conditioner that isn't even running right now. If you don't comply, the fine increases to $500, and if you continue to refuse, we'll place a lien on your property." She smiled then, a thin, satisfied smile that made my blood boil. "Have a good day, Mr. Hendricks." She turned and clicked her way back down my driveway, leaving me standing in my doorway holding the most ridiculous piece of paper I'd ever seen. I went inside and called my neighbor, Tom, who'd been dealing with Patricia's nonsense for longer than I had. "Snow on your AC." Tom laughed when I told him. "That's a new one even for her. Last month she fined the Johnsons because their mailbox was half an inch too tall. This is insane. Can she actually do this?" "Unfortunately, yeah. When you bought your house, you signed the HOA agreement. Technically, she can fine you for anything that's in those guidelines, no matter how stupid." I hung up and spent the next hour reading through the entire HOA guideline document, all 47 pages of it. Sure enough, there it was in Section 12, subsection C. All outdoor equipment, including but not limited to HVAC systems, must be maintained in pristine condition and kept free of debris, discoloration, or damage. The language was vague enough that Patricia could interpret debris however she wanted. And apparently, she wanted to interpret it as snow. I went outside with a broom and swept off the AC unit, then took a picture and emailed it to Patricia. I wasn't going to pay the fine, but I'd at least show I'd cleared the snow. Maybe that would be enough. It wasn't. 3 days later, I received another notice. This time, the fine had jumped to $500 because I hadn't paid the original $200. Patricia had also included a note saying that my defiant attitude was being documented for future reference. I decided to fight it. I requested a hearing with the HOA board, which consisted of Patricia and 4 other residents who seemed to live in mortal fear of disagreeing with her. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday evening at the community center. The community center was a small building at the entrance to our development, paid for by our HOA dues. It contained a meeting room, a small gym, and offices for the HOA board. More importantly, it was heated by a commercial HVAC system that I had installed 5 years ago when the old system died. The HOA had hired my company, Hendricks Heating and Cooling, for the job. I'd given them a fair price and done good work, installing a top-of-the-line system that could handle the Minnesota winters and summers with no problem. I'd also signed a maintenance contract with them, agreeing to service the system twice a year for a reduced rate. I did the work personally, considering these people my neighbors and wanting to make sure they were taken care of. As I sat in my truck in the parking lot on Monday evening, looking at that community center, a thought occurred to me. A perfectly logical, entirely legal thought. I walked into the building and found the meeting room. Patricia sat at the head of a long table, flanked by the other board members, Robert Chen, Margaret Davis, David Foster, and Susan Williams. They all looked uncomfortable, like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Hendricks," Patricia said as I entered, "please sit." I sat in the chair facing the board, feeling like I was on trial for murder instead of having snow on my air conditioner. "We've reviewed your case," Patricia continued, not bothering with any pleasantries. "You failed to maintain your outdoor equipment according to community standards, and you failed to pay the initial fine. The board has decided to uphold the $500 penalty. Additionally, we're adding a monthly inspection fee of $50 to ensure future compliance." "A monthly inspection fee," I said. "You're going to charge me $50 a month to look at my AC unit?" "To ensure compliance," Patricia repeated. "Unless you'd prefer we simply place a lien on your property now." Robert Chen shifted in his seat, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Patricia, maybe we should discuss." The vote was 3-2. Patricia cut him off. "The decision stands." I looked at the other board members. Robert and Margaret were clearly the dissenting votes, but the other two, David and Susan, wouldn't meet my eyes. "Fine," I said, standing up. "I'll pay the $500, but I want it noted that I think this is a complete abuse of power." "Noted," Patricia said with that same thin smile. "Have a good evening, Mr. Hendricks." I walked out of that meeting room furious. $500 for snow on an AC unit. $50 a month for Patricia to come harass me on my own property. It was extortion, plain and simple, but it was technically legal because I'd signed that HOA agreement. I sat in my truck for a long time, thinking. Then I pulled out my phone and looked up the maintenance contract I had with the HOA. I'd signed it 5 years ago, and it was set to automatically renew every year unless either party gave 30 days notice of cancellation. I opened my laptop, pulled up the contract, and read through it carefully. There was nothing in it that required me to maintain the contract. It was a voluntary agreement, offering my services at a discounted rate in exchange for guaranteed regular work. I drafted an email right there in the parking lot. "Dear Meadowbrook Estates HOA Board," I wrote. "This email serves as formal notice that I am canceling our maintenance contract for the HVAC system at the community center, effective 30 days from today. Thank you for your business over the past 5 years. Sincerely, Jason Hendricks, Hendricks Heating and Cooling. I read it 3 times, making sure the language was professional and clear. Then I hit send. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in days. Let Patricia find another HVAC technician. There were plenty in Rochester. I was done being her neighbor and her contractor at the same time. The next morning, my phone rang at 7. It was Patricia. "What is the meaning of this email?" she demanded without saying hello. "Exactly what it says. I'm terminating our maintenance contract." "You can't do that. We have an agreement." "The agreement allows either party to cancel with 30 days notice. I'm giving you 30 days notice." "This is because of the fine, isn't it? This is retaliation." "This is a business decision," I said calmly. "I've decided to focus on other clients. You have 30 days to find a new technician." "You're being childish. I'm running my business." "Have a good day, Patricia." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, but I felt good, really good. Over the next week, Patricia called me 4 more times, each call more aggressive than the last. She threatened to sue me for breach of contract until I emailed her the relevant section showing I was within my rights to cancel. She threatened to fine me for unprofessional conduct until I pointed out that my business activities weren't covered by HOA regulations. She even threatened to have me kicked out of the neighborhood, which we both knew she couldn't do. Finally, she left me alone. February turned into March. The snow started to melt, revealing all the winter damage underneath. I paid the $500 fine because I didn't want a lien on my house, and I gritted my teeth when Patricia showed up on the 1st of March to do her inspection of my AC unit. "Looks acceptable," she said, making a note on her clipboard. "I'll be back on April 1st. "Looking forward to it," I said through clenched teeth. My 30 days notice to the HOA expired on March 15th. The next day, I got a panicked call from Robert Chen. "Jason, I'm sorry to bother you," he said. "I know you canceled the contract, but the heat at the community center isn't working right. It's barely getting above 60 degrees in here, and we have a big event scheduled for this weekend. Is there any way you could come take a look?" "Did you find a new maintenance company?" I asked. "Well, no, not yet. Patricia's been handling that, and I think she's been having trouble finding someone who'll match your rates." "I'm sure she has. Most companies charge about 30% more than I was charging you." "Right. So could you come out? Just this once. We'd pay your regular rate, not the contract rate." I thought about it. My regular rate for a service call was $250 compared to the $100 I'd been charging under the contract. "I can come out Friday afternoon," I said. "But I want payment up front, and I want it in writing that this is a one-time service call, not a renewal of the contract." "Absolutely. Thank you, Jason." Friday afternoon, I drove to the community center with my tools. Robert met me at the door, looking relieved. "The heat's been getting worse," he said. "This morning it was 55 degrees in here. People are complaining." I went to check the HVAC system. It was in the mechanical room at the back of the building, a large commercial unit that I knew intimately because I'd installed it. I opened the access panel and immediately saw the problem. The air filter was completely clogged with dust and debris, restricting airflow to the point where the system was barely functioning. A simple 15-minute fix, replacing the filter with a new one. But as I looked at that clogged filter, I had a realization. This system needed maintenance every 6 months. I'd done the last service in October, which meant the next one was due in April. I'd been scheduling those appointments, ordering the parts, keeping everything running smoothly. Now, nobody was doing that. I replaced the filter and got the system running properly again. Robert paid me the $250 and thanked me profusely. You should really get a maintenance contract set up with someone, I told him as I packed up my tools. This system needs regular service, or you're going to have bigger problems. I'll talk to Patricia about it, Robert said, but he didn't sound confident. I drove home and didn't think much more about it. Spring arrived properly in April, and I was busy with the seasonal rush. Every homeowner in Rochester suddenly remembered that their air conditioning existed and wanted it serviced before summer. I worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and barely had time to think about the HOA or Patricia or any of it. Patricia showed up on April 1st for her inspection, looked at my AC unit for 30 seconds, took her $50 and left. The whole thing was ridiculous, but I decided it was easier to just pay the stupid fee than to fight it. May brought warmer weather and a new problem for the community center. Robert called me on a Tuesday morning. Jason, I'm really sorry to ask, but the AC at the center isn't working. Could you come out? Did you get that maintenance contract set up? Patricia's still working on it. She's got quotes from 3 companies, but they're all expensive. Robert, I told you in March that you needed regular maintenance. It's been 7 months since I last serviced that system. I know. Could you just come out, please? I checked my schedule. I was booked solid for the next 2 weeks with other clients who paid me on time and didn't give me grief about snow on my AC unit. I can fit you in next Thursday, I said. Thursday? But it's getting hot out. The gym is unusable and we have yoga classes scheduled. Thursday's the best I can do. My regular rate still applies. There was a pause. Patricia's not going to like the cost. Then Patricia should have set up a maintenance contract with someone. Thursday at 2, Robert, take it or leave it. We'll take it, thank you. I showed up Thursday at 2 and found the community center sweltering. The outside temperature was in the low 80s, unusual for May in Minnesota, and inside it had to be pushing 90. Robert was sweating through his shirt. I checked the system and found multiple issues. The condenser coils needed cleaning, the refrigerant was low, and one of the fan motors was making an ominous grinding noise that suggested it would fail soon. How long to fix it? Robert asked. I can clean the coils and recharge the refrigerant today. That'll get you running. But that fan motor needs to be replaced, and I don't have the right part on my truck. I'll have to order it. How much? The service today is $300. The fan motor replacement will be another $500 parts and labor. Robert went pale. $800. That's my standard rate. Under the maintenance contract, it would have been about $400 total, and I probably would have caught these problems before they got this bad. Robert rubbed his face. Okay, do what you can today, and we'll have to discuss the fan motor with the board. I did the work and got the AC running, but I knew that fan motor wouldn't last long. A month, maybe 2 if they were lucky. As I was leaving, I ran into Patricia in the parking lot. She'd clearly heard about the repair costs. $800 is outrageous, she said, blocking my path to my truck. You're price gouging. I'm charging my standard rate, the same rate I charge everyone. We're your neighbors. You should give us a discount. I gave you a discount for 5 years under the maintenance contract. You chose not to renew it. You canceled it because you were throwing a tantrum about a legitimate fine. I canceled it because it's my business and I can choose my clients. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other appointments. I moved past her to my truck. As I drove away, I saw her in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot with her phone to her ear, probably calling some other board member to complain about me. June arrived with a heat wave. Minnesota summers can be brutal, and this one was shaping up to be a scorcher. My business was booming. I hired 2 additional technicians just to keep up with demand. On June 23rd, Robert called me again. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me was curious. Jason, The AC is dead, completely dead. We need you out here right away." That fan motor finally gave up, didn't it? I guess. I don't know. It's 95 degrees outside and it's got to be over 100 in here. We have a kids' summer camp program starting Monday. We need AC. I told you that motor needed to be replaced. I know. Patricia said it was too expensive and that we should wait and see if it lasted the summer. I almost laughed. Patricia Montgomery, in all her infinite wisdom, had decided to gamble on a failing fan motor in the middle of a Minnesota summer. "I'm booked solid through next week," I said. "Emergency calls only, and even those I'm having to prioritize. This is an emergency. It's an emergency that you were warned about 6 weeks ago. I've got elderly clients without AC, Robert. They take priority." "What about after them?" I checked my schedule. "I can get there Tuesday afternoon. 5 days from now. 5 days. The camp starts Monday. You'll have to cancel the camp or move it somewhere else. Jason, please, we'll pay whatever you want. Tuesday afternoon is the best I can do, and the price is $1,000. $300 for the emergency service fee, $500 for the motor replacement, and $200 for expediting the parts order." Robert was quiet for a long moment. $1,000. Patricia's going to lose her mind. That's the price. Do you want the appointment or not? We'll take it. I showed up Tuesday afternoon to find the community center locked, and a sign on the door saying the summer camp had been moved to an alternative location. Robert let me in, and the heat inside hit me like a wall. It had to be at least 110 degrees. "We had to rent space at the recreation center downtown," Robert told me as I headed to the mechanical room. "It's costing us $300 a day." "So I'm actually saving you money," I said. The fan motor was completely burned out, just as I'd predicted. I replaced it, tested the system, and got everything running smoothly. The whole job took about 4 hours. Robert handed me a check for $1,000, and I could see his hand shaking slightly. "Jason, I need to ask you something," he said. "Would you consider coming back as our maintenance contractor? I've talked to the other board members, and we all agree this isn't working. We need reliable service. What does Patricia think about that? She's against it. But the vote is 4-1 to offer you a new contract. We can't afford these emergency repairs, and we can't afford to have the center shut down." I thought about it. On one hand, the petty part of me enjoyed watching Patricia's plans blow up in her face. On the other hand, I was a businessman, and a maintenance contract was reliable income. "I'll do it," I said, "but my rates have gone up. $200 per service visit twice a year, and I want a clause in the contract that says the HOA can't retaliate against me as a homeowner for any business decisions I make. That's fair. I'll draw up the contract and send it to you." "One more thing," I added. "I want the monthly inspection fee dropped, the $50 Patricia's been charging me." Robert looked uncomfortable. "I'll bring it up at the next board meeting." "No board meeting. That fee is harassment, and we both know it. Either it gets dropped or I don't sign the contract." "Okay. I'll talk to Patricia." We shook hands, and I left feeling like I'd won something, even if I wasn't quite sure what. 2 days later, Robert called to tell me that Patricia was refusing to drop the inspection fee. The board had voted 3-2 to eliminate it, with Patricia and Susan voting against, but Patricia claimed she had veto power as HOA president. "I looked at the bylaws," Robert said. "She doesn't actually have veto power. The board vote stands. The inspection fee is dropped. And the maintenance contract, I'll email it to you today. Patricia's furious, but there's not much she can do about it. She's outvoted." The contract arrived that afternoon. I read through it carefully, had my lawyer look it over, and signed it. I was back to maintaining the community center's HVAC system, but this time on my terms and at a fair price. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Patricia's car pulled into my driveway on July 1st at 7 in the morning. I watched from my kitchen window as she got out, carrying her clipboard and wearing the expression of someone about to declare war. I opened the door before she could ring the bell. "Good morning, Patricia." "The inspection fee has been dropped," she said, her voice tight. "But I want you to know that I will be personally monitoring your property for any violations at all, and when I find them, you'll be fined accordingly." "I'm sure you will. You think you're clever, don't you? Manipulating the board, holding the community center hostage until you got your way." "I didn't manipulate anyone. I run a business and I made a business decision. The board made their choice." "You're a vindictive, petty man, Mr. Hendricks." That stung, but I kept my voice calm. "If you don't have any official HOA business, I'd like to get back to my morning." She stared at me for a long moment, her face flushed with anger. Then she turned and walked back to her car, got in, and drove away fast enough to leave tire marks on my driveway. I went back inside and sat down at my kitchen table, my coffee cold now. I wasn't sure if I'd won or just made things worse for myself. July turned out to be the hottest month in Rochester's recorded history. The AC systems all over town were working overtime, and I was working 18-hour days just to keep up. I serviced the community center's system as scheduled, and everything ran smoothly. Patricia kept her promise to monitor my property. I'd see her car driving slowly past my house at odd hours, and twice I caught her taking pictures of my yard from the sidewalk. But I kept everything immaculate. My grass was mowed exactly to HOA specifications, my mailbox was properly maintained, and my AC unit stayed spotless. In August, I got a violation notice for having my garbage cans visible from the street. They were at the curb on trash day, which was allowed, but Patricia claimed I'd put them out too early. The fine was $100. I fought it, providing time-stamped photos showing the cans had been placed at the curb at 6 in the morning on trash day, well within the allowed time frame. The board voted to dismiss the fine. Patricia was outvoted again. September brought cooler weather and a change in the HOA board. Elections were held, and while Patricia retained her position as president, Margaret and David didn't run for re-election. 2 new members joined, Frank Miller and Jennifer Walsh, both of whom seemed more interested in reasonable community management than in Patricia's vendetta against me. October was quiet. I did the scheduled maintenance on the community center's HVAC system, preparing it for winter. Everything was running perfectly. Then November happened. I got a call from Robert on a Friday afternoon. "Jason, we have a problem. A big problem." "What kind of problem?" "Patricia's been arrested for embezzlement." I sat down hard in my desk chair. "What?" The new board members requested a financial audit, just routine stuff. But the auditor found discrepancies. A lot of discrepancies. Patricia's been skimming money from the HOA accounts for years. They're saying it could be over $50,000. I thought about all those fines Patricia had been levying. The inspection fees. The aggressive enforcement of minor violations. How much of that money had actually gone into the HOA accounts, and how much had gone into Patricia's pocket? "Is this confirmed?" She was arrested this morning. "It's all over the neighborhood." The police searched her house and found records, bank statements, the whole thing. "It's bad, Jason. Really bad." I hung up and immediately went online looking for news. Sure enough, there it was. Local HOA president arrested for embezzlement. The article included Patricia's booking photo, her face red and tear-streaked, nothing like the composed, aggressive woman I'd been dealing with for months. The details came out over the following weeks. Patricia had been systematically stealing from the HOA for 3 years, using her position as president to falsify records and divert funds into personal accounts. She'd been inflating repair costs, pocketing fine money, and creating fake vendor invoices. The snow on my AC unit that started this whole mess. That fine had never been recorded in the official HOA books. Patricia had kept that $500 for herself. Same with the monthly inspection fees she tried to impose. It was all personal enrichment disguised as community enforcement. The investigation revealed she'd stolen nearly $70,000 total. She was charged with felony embezzlement, fraud, and theft. The HOA filed a civil suit to recover the funds, and Patricia's assets were frozen by the court. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I mostly felt tired and a little sad. Patricia had been awful to me, but destroying her life over HOA rules and stolen money seemed like such a waste. The board held an emergency meeting in December to address the situation. Jennifer Walsh was elected as interim president until proper elections could be held. One of her first acts was to review all the fines and fees Patricia had levied over the past 3 years. Jennifer called me personally. "Jason, I've been going through the records. Patricia fined you multiple times for violations that don't appear in the official logs. The board wants to refund you any money you paid for illegitimate fines. How much are we talking about?" "Looks like $500 for the snow incident, plus $300 for the garbage can violation that was dismissed. We found records showing Patricia collected that fine anyway after the board dismissed it. I never paid that second fine." According to these bank records, someone wrote a check to the HOA for $300 in August. Was that you? I thought back. August. Patricia had come to my door, insisting that the board's dismissal didn't matter and I still owed the money. She'd been so aggressive that I'd written a check just to get her to leave. I'd forgotten about it, assuming it had gone into the HOA account like it was supposed to. Yeah, that was me. "I'm sorry, Jason. Patricia took that money. The HOA will refund you $800 total. It's the least we can do." I received the check a week later, along with a formal apology letter signed by all the board members. They also voted to eliminate the vague, debris language from the equipment maintenance guidelines and to institute new financial oversight procedures to prevent future embezzlement. Patricia's trial was scheduled for March 2025. I read about it in the newspaper. She pleaded guilty to multiple felony counts in exchange for a reduced sentence. She was ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA, sentenced to 4 years in prison, and permanently banned from serving on any HOA or community board in Minnesota. I ran into Robert at the grocery store a few weeks after the sentencing. He looked older somehow, tired. "How's the new board working out?" I asked. "Good, really good actually. Jennifer's doing a great job. We're focused on actual community maintenance now instead of nitpicking everyone's houses. It's what the HOA should have been all along." "That's good to hear. I wanted to thank you, Jason, for not giving up on us. You could have walked away and never looked back, but you came back and signed that maintenance contract. We appreciate it." "It's just business," I said, but I smiled. "It's more than that. You're a good guy, and I'm sorry about everything Patricia put you through." We shook hands, and I went home feeling like maybe, finally, this whole nightmare was actually over. Spring 2025 arrived with cleaner air and a lighter feeling in the Meadowbrook Estates neighborhood. The community center hummed along with its perfectly maintained HVAC system. My scheduled service visits went smoothly, and I never had to make another emergency call. The monthly HOA meetings became productive sessions about actual community needs, instead of Patricia's personal grievances. Neighborhood events started happening again, without the constant threat of violations hanging over everyone's heads. People started actually enjoying living in Meadowbrook Estates. I kept my house in good condition, but now it was because I wanted to, not because I was afraid of $100 fine for a mailbox that was half an inch too tall. My AC unit sat in my backyard, occasionally covered in snow during the winter, and nobody cared because it was just an air conditioner doing its job. The story made its way around Rochester, becoming something of a local legend. The HVAC guy who fought back against the tyrannical HOA president and accidentally exposed a major embezzlement scheme. I got calls from other contractors sharing their own HOA horror stories, and even picked up some new clients who'd heard about what happened. My business grew. I hired a third technician and bought another service truck. Hendricks Heating and Cooling became known not just for quality work, but for honest dealing and fair prices. I built a reputation as someone who stood up for what was right, even when it cost me. One afternoon in June, I was servicing the community center's AC system, getting it ready for another Minnesota summer when Jennifer stopped by. "System running good?" she asked. "Perfect. This is a solid unit. Should give you another 10 years easy with proper maintenance." "That's what we like to hear." She paused, then added, "I heard from Patricia's lawyer. She wants to write you a letter of apology, part of her rehabilitation program or something. Would you be willing to receive it?" I thought about it. Did I want to hear from Patricia Montgomery? Did I want her apology? "Sure," I said finally. "I'll read it." The letter arrived 2 weeks later, forwarded through Jennifer. It was handwritten on lined paper, Patricia's normally precise handwriting shaky and uncertain. "Dear Jason," it began. "I'm writing to apologize for my treatment of you during my time as HOA president. I was wrong to fine you unjustly, wrong to harass you, and wrong to use my position to target you personally. I was dealing with financial problems and personal issues that I have no excuse for taking out on you and others in the community. I stole money that wasn't mine, and I hurt people who trusted me. I'm trying to become a better person, and part of that is acknowledging the harm I caused. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Sincerely, Patricia Montgomery." I read it 3 times, then folded it and put it in a drawer. I didn't feel angry anymore or vindicated or much of anything really. It was just a letter from someone who'd made terrible choices and was trying to make amends. I never wrote back, but I didn't throw the letter away either. Maybe someday I'd respond, or maybe I wouldn't. Either way, it didn't matter much. Life in Meadowbrook Estates continued. Seasons changed. The HOA functioned the way it was supposed to, maintaining common areas and dealing with actual community issues. I continued servicing the community center's HVAC system twice a year, and it continued running perfectly. The whole experience taught me something important about standing up for yourself and about the fine line between justice and revenge. I'd wanted to punish Patricia for her unfair treatment, and I'd found a perfectly legal way to do it by canceling that maintenance contract. But I hadn't exposed her embezzlement. That had come out through other people's diligence and a routine audit. I'd just been a guy trying to run his business and live his life without being harassed over snow on his air conditioner. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes standing your ground and refusing to be pushed around is its own reward. On a Friday evening in July, I was grilling burgers in my backyard when Tom came over with a 6-pack of beer. "You hear the news?" he asked. "What news?" "Jennifer's running for city council." Using her experience turning around the HOA as her platform, actually has a real shot at winning. "Good for her," I said, flipping a burger. "She'll be good at it." Never thought I'd see the day when someone used Meadowbrook Estates HOA as a positive talking point. Tom laughed, opening 2 beers and handing me one. You know this whole thing started because Patricia fined you over snow, right? If she just left you alone, none of this would have happened. She'd still be skimming money and making everyone miserable. Probably, I said. But she didn't leave me alone. She pushed, and I pushed back, and everything unraveled from there. The butterfly effect. Snow on an AC unit leads to prison time and political reform. We clinked bottles and drank, watching the sun set over my perfectly HOA-compliant backyard. My AC unit sat on its concrete pad, clean and maintained because I chose to keep it that way, not because someone with a clipboard was threatening to fine me. In September, I got a call from a reporter at the local paper. She was doing a follow-up story on the Patricia Montgomery case and wanted to interview me about my experience. I'd rather not, I told her. It's over. I've moved on. But you're a key part of the story. Your cancellation of the maintenance contract was what made the board look closer at the finances. That's not accurate. I canceled the contract because it was a business decision. The board ordered an audit because it was responsible governance. Those two things weren't connected. Still, people want to know about the small business owner who stood up to the corrupt HOA president. I didn't stand up to corruption. I didn't even know about the embezzlement. I just refused to be treated badly and made a decision about my business. That's all. That's still a good story. Then tell that story, but leave my name out of it. Please. She agreed, and when the article ran a few weeks later, I was referred to only as a local contractor who had been targeted by Montgomery's enforcement actions. That was fine with me. I didn't need my name in the paper or recognition for accidentally helping catch a criminal. I just wanted to live my life and run my business in peace. October brought another heating season, and I did my scheduled maintenance on the community center's system. Everything worked perfectly, as it always did when properly maintained. That was the thing about HVAC systems. Take care of them and they'll take care of you. Neglect them and they'll fail when you need them most. Kind of like communities, I thought. Kind of like relationships. Kind of like everything, really. Jennifer won her city council race in November, running on a platform of transparent governance and community accountability. Her first act after being sworn in was to propose new oversight rules for HOAs throughout Rochester, preventing the kind of unchecked authority that had allowed Patricia to operate for so long. The holidays came, and Meadowbrook Estates looked beautiful. The HOA had used some of the recovered embezzlement funds to upgrade the common area lighting, and the whole development sparkled with tasteful decorations. The community center hosted a holiday party that actually felt like a community celebration instead of a mandatory HOA meeting. I brought cookies and stood around making small talk with neighbors I'd barely known before all of this happened. We'd all been so isolated before, everyone afraid of violations and fines, nobody wanting to draw attention. Now people actually talked to each other, helped each other, acted like neighbors on Christmas Eve. I was sitting in my living room watching snow fall outside my window when my phone rang. It was Robert. "Just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas," he said, "and to thank you again. The community center's heat is working perfectly, even in this cold snap." "That's what proper maintenance does," I said. "It's more than that. You gave us a reason to look closer at everything, to ask questions, to hold leadership accountable. Jennifer wouldn't be on the city council if this hadn't all happened. The whole neighborhood wouldn't be what it is now. You're giving me too much credit. Maybe, but I wanted you to know it made a difference. Merry Christmas, Jason. Merry Christmas, Robert." I hung up and watched the snow fall, thinking about everything that had happened. A 3-inch layer of snow on an air conditioner had led to fines, confrontations, a canceled contract, emergency repairs, exposed embezzlement, criminal trials, political change, and community transformation. All because I'd refused to accept being treated unfairly. All because I'd stood my ground over something as simple and ridiculous as snow on an HVAC unit. The snow continued falling, covering everything in clean white. My AC unit was out there under it, getting buried, and I didn't care. In the spring, I'd brush it off and do my seasonal maintenance check. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd let it sit there with snow on it because it was my property and it didn't matter and nobody had the right to fine me for weather. That was freedom, I realized. Not the big, dramatic gestures, but the small choices. The ability to make decisions about your own property and your own business without someone with a clipboard and a power trip making your life miserable. Spring 2026 arrived, and with it came the annual HOA elections. The board had expanded to 7 members under Jennifer's reforms before she left for the city council, and all 7 positions were contested by people who wanted to serve the community rather than control it. I didn't run for the board. I had no interest in HOA politics. But I voted, and I attended the annual meeting, and I watched as the new board laid out plans for actual improvements instead of enforcement actions. New playground equipment for the common area, upgraded security lighting, a community garden. Things that brought people together instead of driving them apart. In May, I got my yearly service contract renewal from the HOA. The rates were the same, the terms were fair, and everything was professional and straightforward. I signed it and sent it back, knowing that for the next year I'd make my scheduled visits, keep the system running, and get paid fairly for my work. That's all I'd ever wanted. Fair treatment, fair payment, and the basic respect of being left alone to live my life. My business continued to thrive. I hired a 4th technician and started looking at commercial office space because my house was getting too crowded with equipment and supplies. Hendricks Heating and Cooling was becoming a real company, not just me and a truck. I thought about expanding into other cities, maybe opening a 2nd location in nearby Mankato or Winona. The possibilities seemed endless in a way they hadn't a year ago. Success built on success, and reputation mattered. One June afternoon, I was doing a service call at a house across town when the homeowner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, asked me about the HOA situation. "You're the one from the news, aren't you? The one who exposed that terrible woman." "I didn't expose her," I said, checking her AC condenser. "Auditors did that. But you started it. You stood up to her." "I just ran my business the way I thought was right." "That's what standing up means," Mrs. Patterson said, "doing the right thing even when it costs you something." My late husband used to say that character is what you do when nobody's watching and nobody will thank you for it. I thought about that as I finished the job and drove to my next appointment. Character, integrity, standing up for what's right. Those were words people used, but what did they really mean in practice? They meant not taking advantage of people who trusted you. They meant treating others fairly even when you didn't have to. They meant running your business honestly and living your life with basic decency toward your neighbors. Patricia had forgotten all of that, or maybe she'd never learned it. She'd seen her position as a way to control people and enrich herself, and in the end, it had destroyed her life. I just wanted to be left alone to clear snow off my property when I felt like it, and that simple desire for basic autonomy had set everything else in motion. The summer of 2026 was hot, but not record-breaking. The community center's AC ran perfectly through July and August. I did my scheduled maintenance in September, preparing the heating system for another Minnesota winter. As I was finishing up, the new HOA president, Frank Miller, stopped by to check on things. "Everything running smoothly?" he asked. "Perfect. You're all set for winter. Good." "Hey, Jason, I wanted to ask you something. The board's been talking about doing a community newsletter, sharing maintenance tips and seasonal information. Would you be willing to write a column about HVAC care? Nothing too technical, just basic stuff homeowners should know." I thought about it. A year ago, I would have said no immediately, wanting nothing more to do with the HOA than absolutely necessary. But things were different now. The board was different. The whole community was different. "Sure," I said. "I can do that." "Great. We'll put you down for the fall issue. Just email me when you have something written." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and drafted an article about preparing your HVAC system for winter. Basic stuff about changing filters, checking thermostats, scheduling professional maintenance. Things every homeowner should know but many didn't. I kept it simple and practical, avoiding technical jargon, trying to be helpful rather than showing off my expertise. When I finished, I read it through twice, made some edits, and emailed it to Frank. It felt good. Helpful. Like I was contributing to the community in a positive way rather than just being at war with it. The newsletter came out in October, and I got several compliments from neighbors who found the article useful. A few people even called to schedule service appointments, citing the newsletter as their motivation to finally get their systems checked. November brought the first snow of the season, and with it, a moment of strange nostalgia. I looked out my window at my snow-covered AC unit and remembered standing in my doorway with Patricia thrusting a violation notice at me. Remembered the anger and frustration and the feeling of helpless rage at unfair treatment. That feeling seemed like it belonged to a different person now. Someone younger and more naive, someone who thought the world should be fair just because fairness made sense. I'd learned that fairness had to be fought for, protected, maintained like an HVAC system. Left alone, things broke down. Power corrupted. People took advantage. You had to stay vigilant, stand up for yourself, and sometimes make hard choices about where to draw your lines. But I'd also learned that revenge wasn't the same as justice, and that sometimes the best victories were the ones where everyone ended up better off. Patricia was in prison, but the community was healthier. I'd had to fight for fair treatment, but now the HOA actually functioned properly. Things had gotten worse before they got better, but they had gotten better. Christmas 2026 was quieter than the year before. I spent it with my sister's family, eating too much and playing board games with my nephews. Nobody asked about the HOA situation. It was old news now, a story that had been told and retold until it lost its sharp edges. I was fine with that. I'd never wanted to be the center of a story. I just wanted to run my business and live my life without harassment. As the year came to a close, I sat in my home office doing end-of-year accounting. Hendricks Heating and Cooling had been my most profitable year ever. The HOA maintenance contract was a small part of that, but a steady and reliable part. Fair payment for good work with both sides honoring their commitments. That was all business should be. That was all community should be. People treating each other with basic decency and respect, following reasonable rules that made sense, holding leaders accountable when they abused their power. Simple concepts, but apparently not easy ones. I closed my laptop and looked around my home office. The room was cluttered with HVAC manuals, invoices, parts catalogs, and framed licenses. Evidence of 15 years building a business and a reputation. Outside, snow fell steadily, covering everything in white. My AC unit was out there getting buried, and somewhere in a prison 3 hours away, Patricia Montgomery was serving time for stealing money and abusing power. Both of those facts were simply true, connected by a chain of cause and effect that started with 3 inches of snow and ended with prison time and community reform. I'd tell my nephews about it someday, when they were old enough to understand. Not as a story about revenge or triumph, but as a lesson about standing your ground, choosing your battles, and understanding that sometimes doing the right thing means simply refusing to accept being treated wrong. For now, though, I was just a guy with a successful HVAC business, living in a functional HOA community, watching snow fall on his air conditioner without any fear of fines or harassment or vindictive enforcement actions. That was enough. That was everything. The snow continued to fall, and I went to bed knowing that tomorrow would bring more service calls, more satisfied customers, more steady work building something that mattered. Not because I was a hero or a reformer or anything special, but because I'd refused to accept unfair treatment and had been willing to make hard choices to protect my dignity and my business. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the world, or at least your small corner of it. 3 inches of snow on an air conditioner, 1 canceled contract, and the courage to stand your ground when someone with power tries to push you around. Simple as that, and as complicated as everything that follows.